My parents texted, "Stay away. We don't want you in our lives." So I quietly cut off every dollar keeping them afloat. By 4 a.m., the family was panicking, the accounts were frozen, and they realized exactly what they'd lost. My name's Adrian. I'm 34. And for most of my life, I was the good son, the dependable one, the problem solver. I was the one who remembered birthdays, fixed broken pipes, covered surprise bills, and drove across state lines in the middle of the night because your brother's car broke down again. I didn't mind it. Not really. I figured that's just what families did. My parents raised me to believe that loyalty meant sacrifice. And I took that lesson to heart, even when it felt like I was the only one learning it. It wasn't always this way. We used to be close, or at least I used to think we were, but over time things changed in subtle, sour ways. It started with little jokes at my expense during family dinners. Adrian's married to his work. My dad would chuckle. Guess that's why we don't have grandkids yet. Or my mom sighing when I'd miss Sunday brunch even though I had a presentation due Monday morning. "Your brother makes time," she'd say, as if being a barista with 3 roommates and no rent responsibilities gave him the same obligations I had. I brushed it off for years, letting it slide with a tight smile and some self-deprecating remark. It's easier to laugh along than to confront the sting, but the weight of it started to show. I'd fly them out for vacations, book the nice hotels, pay the restaurant tabs, even cover my brother's overdraft fees just this once, which turned into every month like clockwork. And still, I felt like an outsider in my own family. My input wasn't taken seriously in group chats. My name was left off the Christmas dinner place cards, every single one hand-lettered by my mother. I didn't even get a stocking anymore. And yet I kept showing up. Birthdays, holidays, house repairs, financial crisis. I was always there until I wasn't. It started unraveling slowly. A few months ago, I received an email from the family accountant. Nothing out of the ordinary. Just the usual quarterly updates about the trust. It was something my grandfather had set up decades ago, long before any of us were born. The trust was substantial, but more than that, it was symbolic and anchor for the family. I was one of 2 designated co-rusties, the other being my Uncle Raymond, who treated the whole thing like a nuisance. "Just sign the damn thing, Adrian," he'd say whenever I asked for details. "You're the numbers guy," and I was. Finance had been my career since I graduated, and managing wealth was second nature to me. I never asked for a bigger slice. I never played games with it. I just kept the machine running because someone had to. That email, though, it had a clause I'd never noticed when I knew no one else in the family had read either. A clause that essentially gave me final say over discretionary distributions if certain thresholds weren't met by the other trustee. I filed it away in the back of my mind, unsure whether I'd ever need it. I didn't want power. I wanted peace. And then came the message. It was a Thursday afternoon, one of those bland days where nothing goes wrong, but nothing feels quite right either. I was wrapping up a call with a client when my phone buzzed. Group text from my mom. "We've talked it over and we think we need space. Please don't reach out anymore." No explanation, no follow-up, just that. And beneath it, my uncle had reacted with a thumbs up. My brother, of course, said nothing. I stared at the screen for a solid minute, wondering if it was some kind of mistake, a poorly worded joke, a misfire. But the longer I stared, the more I realized something else was happening. Something colder, premeditated. And that's when I remembered the voice message from my brother a week prior. He was laughing, half drunk. "Mom says you're getting weird about the money, that you're making things complicated. You know this whole family would run smoother if you just stopped trying to control everything." It all clicked. The sudden coldness at the last family dinner. The way my name had been missing from the joint birthday invite for my nephew. The way my uncle had started handling paperwork stuff behind my back. They'd had this planned. They thought I'd just quietly bow out and leave everything to them like always. I stared at the message again, read it 3 times. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could have begged for clarification, could have written a paragraph about all the things I'd done, all the ways I'd supported them, but I didn't. I typed 1 sentence. "Of course I'll cancel my direct deposits first thing." I didn't even wait for a reply. That night, I logged into every account tied to the family trust, every joint investment, every shared emergency fund that I had helped set up. I wasn't being malicious, I was being precise. The moment I saw Uncle Raymond had signed off on a $15,000 vacation advance 2 days prior, I knew I wasn't overreacting. The paper trail was sloppy. Expenses masked as property upkeep had gone to a casino in Reno. My brother had filed a $6,700 reimbursement for medical travel, a trip that I knew for a fact was to Coachella. By midnight, I had frozen the trust under the discretionary authority clause, flagged it for audit, emptied the vacation fund into a holding account pending review, triggered an alert that halted all external transfers above $1,000, and lastly, I updated the tax profile. With the protections I'd removed, the trust would now be subject to the standard estate tax bracket, something they'd all worked hard to avoid with my help. That buffer gone. At 4:02 a.m., my phone started buzzing. 17 calls from my brother, 6 from my mom, 1 from Uncle Raymond. No voicemails, just the aggressive, panic type of calls that don't ask questions, just demand answers. I didn't pick up. I didn't even open the messages they eventually sent. I sent one reply to the group chat typed cleanly. No emojis, no period. Wishing you all the distance you asked for. That was it. I locked my phone, tossed it on the nightstand, and slept better than I had in months. What they didn't know, what they still don't know, is what I took with me. The next morning, I didn't check my phone. I went for a run instead, something I hadn't done in weeks. There was a chill in the air, the kind that bites at your lungs and makes every breath feel new. I ran until my legs burned my mind, empty my body alive in a way it hadn't felt since before all of this. I didn't even think about the fallout. Not yet. Not until I got home and found 24 unread messages waiting for me. The tone had shifted overnight. The early ones were furious from my brother. What did you do? You can't just mess with the trust. Then my mom, you're being dramatic, Adrian. We just needed space, not whatever this is. Uncle Raymond, if this is your way of throwing a tantrum, you've gone too far. You'll be hearing from our lawyer. But the later ones, those were different. Can we just talk? You're blowing this out of proportion. We didn't mean to hurt you, and finally from my dad who hadn't said a word up until then. Please don't do anything you'll regret. I read that one twice, laughed, then deleted it. See, what they didn't understand, what they never understood, was that I didn't do this out of spite. I didn't retaliate out of pettiness or revenge. I made a decision, a clean break when they asked for, whether they realized it or not. But let me back up, because I promised I'd tell you what I took. It started 2 years ago, right after my grandfather passed away. He was a quiet man, stern but kind in his own way. Never one for fanfare, but sharp until the end. He'd pulled me aside after the funeral, eyes watery but focused, and handed me a letter. Not a legal document, not some formal will, just a handwritten note in his scrolled, no-nonsense penmanship. You're the only one I trust to protect the family from itself. That was all it said. No signature, no explanation. But that letter stayed with me, tucked in the back of my safe behind a stack of old bonds and property deeds. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. I figured he meant the trust or the taxes or the accounts I helped manage. But now, years later, I understood. He saw them clearly even when I didn't. What I took wasn't just money. It was leverage insurance protection. Over the years, while I was the one drafting the documents, filing the reports, and keeping everything afloat, I started noticing discrepancies. Little things, a missing signature here, a double charge there, accidental transfers. My uncle had gotten sloppy. And my brother, well, he never respected the value of a dollar that wasn't his. So I started documenting everything quietly, thoroughly. I had copies of every expense report, screen recorded every bank transfer they made under my name, kept a spreadsheet of every loan they never paid back. I even had emails where my mother thanked me for covering property taxes they told the rest of the family they had paid. But the real prize, the ownership documents for the lake house. That house had always been presented as our family's shared vacation home. That's what everyone said. What no one realized was that after Grandpa passed, I bought out the remaining mortgage with my own funds. Quietly, legally, I never changed the name on the mailbox, never mentioned the title transfer. I just handled the payments while everyone else used it for summer getaways and holiday photos. My brother even proposed to his fiancée there, and it's mine, fully paid off, legally filed. The deed rests in my office drawer, notarized and untouched. They thought the trust owned it. They were wrong. So when I froze the family's accounts, yes, the trust was paralyzed, the vacation fund gone, the estate protections reversed. But the lake house that was never theirs to begin with, they'd built memories on borrowed time. And now, well, now it's locked empty, off limits. I changed the passcode to the front gate, scheduled security upgrades, and for good measure, I listed it as an exclusive rental on a high-end platform starting at $3,000 a night. Booked solid through the next 5 months. I didn't do it to make money. I did it because my grandfather trusted me to protect the family from itself. That night, my mom called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was tight, tearful, but controlled. Adrian, we didn't mean what we said. It was just things have been tense. We miss you, your brother. He's struggling. You know that. And your uncle, he's under a lot of pressure. We shouldn't have pushed you out. Please call us. Let's fix this. I listened once, then deleted it. Because here's the truth they still haven't faced. This wasn't about one message or one account. This was years of being the backup plan, the safety net, the reliable disappointment they knew would always catch the fall. Pay the debt, show up uninvited but needed. They cut the cord. I just made sure they couldn't grab it again when they started to fall. And now they're starting to fall. What happens next? Well, let's just say they haven't even noticed the other thing I took with me. But they will. They always do. It was 2 days later when the group chat exploded again, this time with panic. It started with a message from my cousin Laya, one of the few family members I actually liked. She rarely got involved in the drama, usually keeping her distance and showing up to family gatherings out of obligation more than enthusiasm, but even she was shaken. Leia, hey, I don't know what's going on, but Aunt Lisa is flipping out. Something about the foundation paperwork. She said you locked her out of the documents folder. I hadn't expected that to come to light so soon. See? The foundation wasn't a charity in the traditional sense. It was a tax shelter. Legal, but very gray. Something my uncle set up a decade ago to manage family giving. And it just so happened that I helped set up the infrastructure and cloud storage for it, back when they didn't know the difference between a password and a PDF. The documents folder. Yeah, I had full admin access. Always did. I never thought I'd need to use it. But after their message, I revoked every user permission and put the whole thing behind encryption. Legally, I didn't have the right to take anything, but they didn't have the right to use my name and ID on the initial filings either. I made sure of that. I had screenshots, metadata, IP logs, everything. So when my aunt realized she couldn't access their financial records, the foundation account statements, or the expense tracking spreadsheets they needed to file their quarterly report, she must have absolutely lost it. I pictured her pacing her kitchen in those awful leopard print slippers, screeching into her fourth glass of wine, flinging her phone at my uncle and yelling, "What did Adrian do now?" And just like that, the cracks turned into a collapse. I got an email that night from a law firm I hadn't heard of before. Some shiny boutique practice in Chicago trying to sound scarier than they were. The subject line, Urgent Family Trust Access Inquiry. I didn't even open it. I forwarded it to my own lawyer with a quick message. This is probably the first of many. Loop me in if anything serious comes through. The next day, my brother showed up at my condo. I wasn't home, of course. I had anticipated something like this. The building has a concierge and security cameras. He wasn't exactly subtle about his arrival either. The desk called me with a note of concern. Apparently, he slammed his hand on the front counter and demanded to be let up, shouting about family emergencies and stolen property. I watched the footage later. There he was in a crumpled hoodie, looking more like a college dropout than a 32-year-old father of two, red-faced, fidgeting, pacing the lobby like a restless teenager waiting for someone to cave. He waited 30 minutes, then left. No call, no message, just an Instagram story. He probably thought I wouldn't see a photo of our grandfather's urn. Yes, the actual urn on the mantle at our parents' house. The caption read, "Some people forgot where they came from," and that's when I realized something had shifted. This wasn't just them scrambling anymore. This was them trying to guilt me back in, to shame me into retreat. And I'll admit that photo hit me in the gut. My grandfather had meant everything to me. He was the only person in that house who ever listened, who taught me how to do the hard thing even when it cost you. And now they were dragging his memory into this mess. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I went into my safe and pulled out the letter he gave me, the same one I mentioned before, folded, slightly yellowed, ink fading. I read it again and then I flipped it over. Something I hadn't noticed before. Scrolled faintly on the back. In the corner were 5 numbers. It looked like a bank account or maybe a combination of code. I don't know how I missed it. I must have looked at that paper 100 times over the years but never flipped it. I scanned the number into my files, then went back to the stack of folders I'd been collecting, files on the trust, the deeds, the business accounts my uncle opened without telling anyone. There it was in an old ledger from 15 years ago, a hidden account, one that had never been touched. My heart started racing. I cross-referenced it with the estate filings and found a single line item, emergency reserve. No details, no balance, no sign of who had access until now. That's what I took, or rather, that's what I was given. Not just leverage, not just proof, not just a house or a trust or access, but a legacy my grandfather had quietly stashed away, hidden from the vultures who would have drained it dry. A nest egg no one else even remembered existed. Not a fortune necessarily, but enough. Enough to change everything. And I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet. Not until I received one more message from my mother. Just 6 words. "We didn't raise you like this." I didn't reply, not yet. But I knew what I'd do next. And they were not ready, not even close. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at that message from my mother. "We didn't raise you like this." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a plea. It was a judgment. A subtle attempt to remind me of my role, of the mold I was supposed to fit. The good son, the quiet one, the provider, the one who pays, who nods, who forgives. That sentence wasn't about guilt. It was about control. And that was the moment I knew. There was no going back. Not this time. Not after everything they'd said and done. Not after they turned my loyalty into expectation. my generosity into obligation, and my silence into permission. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Her name was Natalia, a sharp, unflinching woman I'd met through a mutual client. She had a gift for anticipating what people would do before they did it, and a blunt honesty I appreciated. I laid out everything what I had access to, what they'd done, the backup documents, the shady deductions, and the trust clause they clearly never read. When I told her about the hidden account my grandfather had left, she went silent for a moment. Then she said, "You have more power than you realize. But if you're going to do this, Adrian, you need to be ready to lose them. All of them." "I already have," I said. She didn't ask any more questions. Within a week, everything was in motion. First, I initiated a full audit of the trust. Natalia helped me file a formal petition to remove Uncle Raymond as co-trustee, citing financial misconduct, unauthorized spending, and failure to notify me of large discretionary withdrawals. Attached to the petition were over 100 pages of supporting documentation, timestamps, emails, flagged expenses, and recorded conversations. I spared no detail. Then we notified the Family Foundation's board, most of whom were names on paper, but the kind of names that cared about reputation. We showed them evidence of misappropriated funds, backdated receipts, and personal trips listed as charity consulting. The fallout was immediate. My uncle was forced to resign from the board within 48 hours to avoid a full-blown investigation. By the end of that week, my brother was suspended from the startup incubator my parents had funded for him using trust money. They had no choice. He wasn't listed as a beneficiary, and his salary had been funneled through a shell company registered under my uncle's name. With the trust frozen and its assets under review, everything he touched was now radioactive. The lake house, I didn't just keep it, I sold it. I contacted a private buyer, someone who wanted a second home for their retirement, and didn't blink at the $2.1 million asking price. The transaction closed in 6 days. The house that had once been their sanctuary, where they held anniversaries, birthdays, and drunken 4th of July barbecues, was gone. No warning, no goodbye. Just a new owner with new keys. I didn't pocket the money. That wasn't the point. Instead, I used it to establish a real foundation, one with transparency, governance, and an actual purpose. I named it the Hayes Initiative, after my grandfather, not the family name. It focused on financial literacy programs for underprivileged youth, something he always talked about but never got to pursue. I put Natalia on the board, recruited friends from the financial sector, people with integrity. It was everything the old foundation pretended to be. And then I sent out the letter. It wasn't an email. I had it printed, signed, and mailed to every immediate family member. My parents, my brother, Uncle Raymond, Aunt Lisa, even Leah. The envelope was thick, formal, and impossible to ignore. It read, "Dear family, this letter serves as formal notice that I am fully withdrawing from all shared financial obligations, including but not limited to the Family Trust Foundation operations, discretionary accounts, estate planning, and vacation properties. As of today, I am no longer responsible for any administrative, fiduciary, or advisory role. All ongoing matters have been handed over to legal counsel, and appropriate authorities have been notified of irregularities where applicable. I have taken steps to protect my name, assets, and professional standing. This is not revenge. It's a boundary. You asked for distance. Now you have it, Adrian." There was silence. No calls, no texts. Not at first, until my father showed up. I heard the knock before I saw him. Slow, deliberate, not like the frantic banging from my brother days earlier. I opened the door, and there he stood, dressed in a blazer like he was coming from church or court. Face pale, I sunken. The look of a man who knew he'd lost something he couldn't buy back. "Adrian," he said. His voice cracked like it hadn't in years. I didn't move, didn't invite him in. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a photo. An old one. Me and Grandpa sitting on the dock behind the lake house, legs dangling over the water. I was maybe 10, holding a fishing rod, grinning with a gap in my teeth. Grandpa was looking at me, not the camera. "I found this in his old drawer," my dad said, his hand trembling slightly. "I thought you should have it." I took the photo, looked at it. "Why now?" I asked. He looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "Because you were right," he whispered, "about all of it. We used you, took from you, never even said thank you. And then when you finally set a boundary, we acted like you betrayed us. But you didn't. We betrayed you." I let the silence settle between us. "You're not here for the trust?" I asked, calm but sharp. "No," he said quickly. I don't want to lose my son." It was the first honest thing he'd said in years. But it wasn't enough. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. "But I'm not coming back either." His face twisted, not in anger, but in that quiet grief that comes when a door finally closes. "I understand," he said. And he did. He turned to leave. Just before he reached the elevator, I called out, "Dad?" He looked back. "Grandpa left me something. A letter. He told me to protect the family from itself." He nodded. "And you did." Then he left. And that was the end. No big confrontation, no dramatic showdown, just quiet accountability. In the weeks that followed, the audit concluded. The trust was dissolved. My uncle was fined quietly but heavily. My brother moved to a smaller apartment and stopped tagging me in his Instagram rants. My mother never called again, and I stopped waiting for her to. Instead, I focused on my new foundation. I gave talks, mentored students, taught kids how to spot the traps in contracts, how to read financial statements, how to hold power responsibly. Sometimes I think about the lake house, about the dock, about the boy with the missing tooth, and the man who saw the truth long before I did. But I never regret walking away, because sometimes the only way to save yourself is to let the family fall apart. And when they did, I didn't just survive, I finally lived.